Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz, your host of the Raiders Report, and the Las Vegas Raiders just released their initial 53-man roster. Coming up here on today's show, we're going to run through the 53-man, but I really want to get some questions, some comments here from Raider Nation. So if you want, hashtag Raiders, or you can super chat to skip the line. Let's talk about the decisions Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco decided to go with today. So we're going to roll through the 53-man here live on the show. I'm going to answer some questions here from the nation, but then also from top to bottom today, we are going to stay live and answer questions. I want to hear what y'all have to say, just like y'all want to hear what Chuggs and I have to say. Then, near the end of today's live show, I'm going to give you my projection on who I think that the Raiders are going to try to bring back for a practice squad, and also talk about some of the players that this silver and black team could look at to potentially add off the waiver wire. For those of you that do not know what the waiver wire is, the Raiders have the 13th pick, because they had the 13th pick in the NFL draft last season, and they're going to have 13th on the list of priority. Think of it as like fantasy football for all y'all that play fantasy, and you get to figure out, all right, I'm the 8th man on the list. That means 7 other people get the pick above you. So I'm going to go through and look at some waiver claim targets that I have seen throughout the day from maybe the past 24 hours that have been released by some NFL teams out there, and then I'm just going to go through and I'm going to just say whether or not the Raiders should go out and they should get those players. So that's coming up here on today's show. I also posted a video on Instagram, but that was like 10 minutes ago, and it just won't load. So, again, coming up today, Raiders 53-man roster. We're going to get into some waiver claims, and I'm going to be answering all of your questions. Hashtag Raiders to get it going. What's up, Mario? Robert Garcia, it's good to see you, man. DJ Johnson, big luck. Mr. Akon, shout out to all of y'all. So, the Raiders, from a quarterback standpoint, they're going to keep Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. And realistically, I'm not surprised that this is the route. On my final 53-man video that I did, this is what I said that the Raiders should do. And I know that a lot of people wanted them to keep Carter Bradley. I know a lot of people wanted them, maybe not really wanted to keep Nathan Peterman, but wanted them to keep Carter Bradley. I think what the Raiders are hoping to do here is they go, I don't really care whether it's Carter, whether it's Nathan Peterman. One of those guys is going to be my practice squad QB. And a little bit later on today's live show, we'll go through and I'll tell you which QB I think that that's going to be. You could also potentially see the Raiders try to add a QB on the waiver wire, if you will. And I was thinking like maybe it's going to be Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Reminder, the Browns have kept 4 quarterbacks, and I don't think that, that's a realistic possibility, though they were shopping Jameis Winston a little bit earlier today. Let's now go to the running back room, and the Raiders decided to keep 4 backs. The number that you see next to the players here up on screen is me counting out the 53-man with you. So it's not their number. It works out perfectly here for Zamir, so I wanted to make that note. Alexander Madison, Amir Abdullah, Dylan Laube, no Sincere McCormick, no Britton Brown. I'm actually curious to see if the Raiders try to, keep a running back for their practice squad, or do they just have Dylan Laube work with a lot of the practice squad players? Just something to keep in mind. From the wide receiver standpoint, and this is the area that, one of the areas that I thought would be kind of interesting, where I knew it was going to be Devante Adams. You knew it was going to be Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, DJ Turner. But then what were the Raiders going to do after that, okay? It is Tyreek McAllister. Shout out to them for really making this one. And then Randall Keaton. The Raiders have a clear idea. They want to get younger, and they want to go with a youth movement. And I really think that you're seeing that on display with what this 53-man roster has entailed. I think it's also showing you that the Raiders are going to play a little bit safer with these new kick return rules, with this new special team rule, which is why they decided to keep the amount of linebackers that they did. Reminder, y'all, we are live here on the Raiders Report. If you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button. Make sure you turn on those notifications every time we go live and drop a vid. I don't want you to miss it. But also, as we go through some of these players here, don't be afraid. Get those questions, get those comments in. I just ask that you use hashtag Raiders in order to do so. Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, Harrison Bryant. This was one of the areas that I am probably more shocked about when you look at the entire depth chart, when you look at the entire 53-man from top to bottom. The Raiders are going to run a lot of 12 personnel. With the Raiders' first depth chart that they put out, they had 2 tight ends as starting ones, Michael Mayer and obviously Brock Bowers. I think this also just illustrates to me another thing, which was Brock Bowers is healthy. Like, I know he's been battling a toe injury. I know that final week during training camp, he didn't play in that final preseason game up against the San Francisco 49ers. But there's no way in hell, like, I don't think there's any way in hell the Raiders keep only 3 tight ends with their plan of 12 personnel if Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, Harrison Bryant is not 100% healthy. Harrison Bryant caught a hospital ball from Gardner Minshew earlier in the preseason. He's okay. Michael Mayer, he's good. Brock Bowers, I do not think that the Raiders would have kept that many tight ends if there was any, and I mean any type of concerns, if you will, with the tight end room. Let's now go to the offensive line. And the offensive line was another position group that I think a lot of people did have some question marks about for the simple cause of what exactly they were going to do with that final offensive line position. Colt Miller, JPJ, Andre James, Dylan Parham, Thayer Munford, all of those were, I would say, pretty well expected. Then DJ Glaze, Cody Whitehair, Andres Pete, those guys, again, expected in the top 8. But I thought that final offensive line position, was between a Jordan Meredith, a Ben Brown, and maybe you could even say a Jalen McKenzie, a Dalton Wagner could have been thrown in there. But the Raiders wanted somebody that they thought was reliable, wanted to be able to play multiple positions on the offensive line, especially on that interior. And Jordan Meredith did a good job this preseason and ultimately ends up making this initial 53-man. So far we have gone through and we've looked at the offensive side of the football, and the Raiders kept 24 players on offense. What's the biggest surprise on offense for the 53-man roster? We're going to give some shout-outs here on the Raiders Report, so let me know what you guys are thinking down below. Biggest surprise on offense for the 53-man. It can either be a player that they kept or a player that they decided to move on from. Like, I think both can be this. Seeing a lot of Rambo Keatons down there, and I think what the biggest separation was when Rambo Keaton was at his best, he was better than Christian Wilkerson. When Rambo Keaton was at his best, he was better than Jalen Guyton. So if I'm going to keep my 6th receiver, that's kind of what I'm looking for. And Keaton's ability to, make some flashy plays, and you could really see in that final preseason game how many targets he got. Antonio Pierce kept trying to feed him the ball. They kept trying to go his way. And when you look at that final preseason game, like, that's really where I think a lot of people are kind of looking. Raiders win says Christian Wilkerson. Yeah, Wilkerson was a player that back on August 6th, I said, 0 just win babies in terms of a chance to make this roster. Chuggs showed that to me last week, and I go, man, I think that this guy might actually make the team. Wilkerson has a shot to make the practice squad.
Hey, you were right all along.
I was right all along, but I mean, I did put Wilkerson on my final 53-man roster that I did.
Maybe it's because I swayed you.
Yeah.
You said gut feeling, no just win babies, tuck that.
It was my gut feeling.
You should have gone with your gut.
I should have gone with my gut. You're not wrong.
You went with your head.
Sometimes we often do. Tulu Griffin from Vincenzo, and I think Tulu Griffin was another player that if you would have told me at the beginning of the offseason, hey, one Raiders UDFA receiver made the team, I would have said it was Tulu Griffin, but Keaton proved to be the more reliable receiver. I think because the Raiders also believe in some of the other players that they have from special teams, maybe is one of the reasons why they didn't keep Tulu. Griffin, though, will be a player that I think ends up making this roster. Somebody said Byron Young. We'll talk about Byron Young here in just a moment. Mario said, did Gainer make it? We'll talk about that here in just a moment. I also see somebody say a lot more surprises on the defensive side of the football. All right, fair enough. B-Rape, question. Thoughts on Siaki Ika? You're going to hear me talk about him. He was a third-round defensive tackle from the Cleveland Browns. He was released today, and he was a third-rounder last year. I want somebody that's better in the run game, and that's something that the Raiders need, and that's where Ika is better at. He's not great, obviously, right? You got released being a third-rounder. Think about the way we were talking about Byron Young. It's probably the way Cleveland would talk about him, but the Browns' defensive line is very deep. So this will be a player, spoiler alert, that you're going to hear me talk about in my waiver wire segment. And he's not the only defensive tackle. But, yeah, I'd put a claim in for him. I think he's better than Byron Young right now. I think what Raider fans want, like Nesta Jade Silvera to be is kind of like what Browns fans, what Raider fans should hope also, Ika can turn into as well. What's up, Jansen? Did a team place a quarterback on practice team that we could pluck as our quarterback 3 or even QB2? So far, you still got to wait until after the waiver period. So the waiver period tomorrow is noon Eastern time. So 11 Central, really, really early there on the West Coast. And, that's where teams are going to start to decide who's going to be on the practice squad, who's not going to be on the practice squad. So, Carter Bradley, he's got to go through waivers. If no team claims him, the Raiders are going to try to bring him back, and that's going to be your practice squad quarterback. Let's go to Navman. What's up, Navman? What time you guys going to arrive at the Back Then Bar and Grill on game day? I suspect to be in town around noon. I don't know exactly what time the doors open. Chuggs and I will be there all day, but I know, with the setup and everything, we're going to be concentrating. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff for work, just full transparency there. So once we get everything set up, they'll probably open the doors. But Chuggs and I, we arrive on Saturday night for the Top Golf event. If anybody wants to party it up with Jeremy and I for this Week 1 event in North Carolina, it's in Raleigh, North Carolina. Go to chatsports.com/week1. We're doing a watch party in person, and I'm excited. Also, Tom Telesco just said that they're going to look to add a quarterback to the practice squad, which should not surprise anybody. I think it's going to end up being Carter Bradley. Maybe it's going to be Nathan Peterman, but Telesco did just say that, and I heard a few people talking about it. So just something to keep in mind. Again, if you want to hang out with Chuggs and I, chatsports.com/week1. Leon, what's up, man? What's up, Mitch? Raiders should sign cornerback and trade Adams. I don't know what show you're watching, but I think you're on the wrong show. I agree with the idea of signing a corner. Also, if you're talking about what Deshaun Jackson said, I don't think Deshaun Jackson has ever been able to prove that he's a reliable source. Jackson said that he talked to Devante, and Devante told him that he's, looking or he's not really happy right now, and he wouldn't be surprised if he wanted to be traded. I'm not buying what Deshaun Jackson is saying. I'm buying what Devante Adams has said for the past week, for the past 2 weeks, and all he continues to show is that he wants to be a Raider. He supports Antonio Pierce. We got to stop listening to those outside people trying to break this team up. Let's go to Noah. Maybe they add a tight end. Again, this is the initial 53. I'm telling you right now, the roster that the Raiders walk out there against the Chargers with will be different than the roster you're looking at today. I promise you, I'm telling you, the roster will be different. That Week 1 roster will be different from what you see today. And maybe they decide to add a tight end. I think that they should add a tight end, quite frankly. I think that if you're going to run 12 personnel and you're going to use the tight end room the way that I anticipate Luke Getsy is going to do it, I think you need to go out and add somebody else. Let's go to John Rodriguez. What's up, man? What the hell, Mitch? What time did you go live? I've been trying to find you since 1 p.m. Pacific. John, I'm sorry. We were waiting for the Raiders to release their 53-man roster, and I decided, all right, because what I didn't want to happen, which is what I thought was going to happen, was I didn't want to be starting this live show right at that time. The Raiders released their roster, and then Chuggs and I are scrambling to get everything together. I wanted to make sure that we had a good video put together. That video is already out on the YouTube channel, and then after that 53-man roster video went out, then we decided to go live and react to it, which is what you're watching here right now. Let's go now to the defensive side of the football. Max Crosby, Malcolm Koonce, Janarius Robinson, Tyree Wilson. The Raiders are going to keep 4 defensive ends. I really wanted them to kick Tyree on the inside and keep Charles Snowden, and maybe that's a overreaction for me to say, but that was a player that I thought played well, was a defensive end that, I'm not kidding you right now, I might have more faith. If we were to win a football game right now, I think I'd have more faith. I know I have more faith in Janarius Robinson than I do Tyree Wilson. Janarius Robinson, though, also looked really good in that preseason game. But then also, I might have more faith in Charles Snowden right now than I do Tyree. I'm not saying that both of those players have higher upside than Tyree Wilson, because that's not true. Tyree Wilson's upside still is extremely high to me. He's just got to be able to figure it out. But you have to be able to get to that point of either, do we think he's going to figure it out, or is he going to turn into another first-round bust because Jonathan Abram cut today. Alex Leatherwood cut today. The Raiders over the past few seasons have the most disgraceful first-round picks, and I think a 5-year stretch probably in NFL history. It was bad. Let's go to the defensive tackle room now. The Raiders decided to keep 5 of these young men right here, and Nesta Jade Silvera and Byron Young ended up beating out Matthew Butler. I don't want to say I got tricked by AP because that's not the right way to put it, but AP definitely persuaded me last week when he was talking about Matthew Butler's, it's starting to click, and he's a player that will do anything that you tell him to do, and he was saying all these right things about Butler. Butler then goes out there in that final preseason game, gets a sack, the first one. I'm pretty surprised that Byron Young ended up making this roster, just simply because there was nothing that he showed in any of those preseason games from an effort standpoint, a talent standpoint, that he deserved to make it. And I am kind of questioning the decision process in that, but maybe Byron's able to figure it out. I don't know, though. Just like Tyree Wilson, I'm starting to get less and less confident that those guys are actually going to be able to figure it out. We got 600 people here watching the Raiders Report, and we're breaking down the 53-man roster. If you haven't already, make sure you click that like button right now. Make sure you subscribe to the Raiders Report. We're pumping out videos every single day, going live all the time. And the next time that you're going to see us live here on the show, Chuggs and I are actually going to be working on Friday. So I'm thinking a little Friday happy hour this week for the Silver and Black. Linebacker room. They didn't keep 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, but 7 linebackers the Raiders ended up keeping. And I wouldn't even just look at these guys just solely based on linebacker. I would look at it more from a special team standpoint. And I think for a lot of people that have been following along with this show, you'll know that we've been saying that the Raiders are going to keep an extra linebacker. I'll admit, I thought they were going to keep 6. 7 is a lot of linebackers, and I think what this is just the talent group. They believe in Kenai Mauga. Kenai Mauga just continues, and I mean continues, to make the roster time and time again. I will admit, if the Raiders decide to add a player, I think Mauga is going to be one of the very first ones to go. But you know what, man? Can everybody down below spam 53 for Amari Gaynor? This is a player who played his flipping dick off in the preseason, a player who showed a lot of spark, and I would not surprise me. This is going to be my hot take because, Gaynor was my number 1 highest rated UDFA player that the Raiders signed after the NFL draft. I thought that he was going to be a good player, and I'll be honest, I didn't anticipate for him to be able to make the impact on an NFL game that he was able to make an impact on. But overall, very, very happy that guy made it. And my bold take is this. Your starting linebacker for the Raiders next season is going to be Robert Spillane and Amari Gaynor. I said it. That's how confident I am in the developmental process of Gaynor. Now, it's also me saying that, well, what happens with Tommy Eichenberg? What necessarily happens with a few other players? It's a bold take, but you know what? On August 27th, I'm down to make that bold take on somebody who's got a nickname like Amari Ferrari. Tell me, man. Let's go to the cornerback position now. I did not know if they were going to end up keeping Brandon Faison or not. Faison was a player that I made a video on, I want to say yesterday, 2 days ago. They're all just starting to bleed in together. And he was a dude that I know Antonio Pierce wanted to be able to evaluate a little bit more. Unfortunately, due to the injuries, he was unable to do that. But they decided to keep him on this team anyway. Pierce also did say that he doesn't like moving on from veteran corners. And when you just see how young and inexperienced this cornerback group is, Brandon Faison is, in fact, the veteran of this group at 27 years old and somebody who doesn't have a lot of playing experience. We know what we got in Nate Hobbs. We know what we got in Jack Jones. But just like we know what we have in Nate Hobbs, we also know that there is some injury concerns with Hobbs. Are we ready to throw MJ Devonshire out there yet? No, I don't think we are. And honestly, if Hobbs goes down, the player that's going to get in is going to be Isaiah Polamalu, not any of the other cornerbacks out there. I want to believe in Jacorian Bennett. And I think one of the things that the Raiders did by keeping that extra cornerback spot there for Faison, I hope that Las Vegas goes out and they add another corner, whether that be in the waiver period, whether that be on the free agent market. I'm going to be talking about some free agent targets that the Raiders can sign over the next 48 hours. Let's go to the safety room. Marcus Epps, Trevon Merrick, Isaiah Polamalu, and Chris Smith. These are the 4 safeties that ended up making the 53-man roster. And again, Isaiah Polamalu is going to be a player that's going to get a lot of different run. They like him as a slot. They also like him being his natural position as a safety. I know some of y'all are probably like, well, wait a minute here. Where the hell's Trey Taylor? So Trey Taylor got put on the short-term IR list, which he's allowed to return week 5. So he's out the first 4 weeks. And the NFL, one of the new rules that they implemented was you're allowed to carry 2 players on your short-term IR and that not count against your 53-man. If the Raiders wanted to carry another one, then you would have had to keep that guy on the 53-man roster. So I think for Trey Taylor, you just got to get healthy. He's still battling that knee injury a little bit, but all the Raiders rookies did make this squad. When Taylor does return, the players that I'm going to be looking at for them to potentially move on from, I think you look at a Randall Keaton. I think you look at a Kenai Malga. I think you look at even a Chris Smith, something along those lines of which player could they potentially move on from. Those would be the guys that right now I would guess would be at the top of that list. Then Daniel Carlson, A.J. Cole, Jacob Bobenmoyer. That is your Raiders' initial 53-man roster. And we got to say this real quick. That's a tough thing to do. Antonio Pierce, Tom Telesco, to look at all those players in the eyes and say, you know what, unfortunately, you're not good enough to make this squad. It's a tough thing. But you know what also? It is part of the gig. It's part of the job. Every single job and everybody does. It's not an easy job to do. But I also don't want all the players that that didn't make the team. We also now got to focus on the guys that did. There's so many players that get to live their dream. Tyreek McAllister posted on IG. He's fired up. Amari Gaynor, I was talking to him yesterday. He's fired up for his opportunity. A lot of these players right here, man, are fired up. And I think when you see how difficult that is to get that list down, that's a tough list to do. You got to give AP, Tom Telesco, a round of applause. But this also tells me this. We're another step closer to regular season football. We're another step closer to going up against the Chargers. And if you're ready for regular season football, I want you to smash that like button right now, because now that this roster is set, I'm ready. I'm ready to take down Harbaugh. I'm ready to take down Justin Herbert. I'm ready to take down Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, and I'm ready to get a Raiders dub week 1. So out of all the players on the defensive side of the football, who was the biggest surprise on defense for the 53-man? In terms of who made the team, I'm not going to lie to you. The name that surprised me the most was Kenai Malga. Malga was definitely an eye-opener. I'll say Byron Young. I was surprised by the fact that he made it. Outside of that, though, Chris Smith was surprising. But if you would have told me Trey Taylor was in the situation that he's in, I would have had Chris Smith make the team. I think that they went with the player that they have more confidence in from special teams. Like, I think they're so confident Marcus Epps, Trevon Merrick, and then Isaiah Paul-Mal that they're like, all right, who's the better overall player for special teams? And I think Chris Smith is the better player right now than Jaden Grant, though Jaden Grant's the better cover safety. Got a super chat coming in from Rebel. What's up, my man? I don't get the Wednesday waiver roster and draft order. I actually think the entire thing is weird. I don't understand how the NFL does everything at 4 p.m. Eastern time, and then this one random thing they end up doing at noon Eastern time, and they go based off the waiver wire period. I think it's weird, and I guess like they have to think of something in order to do it, but I'm not going to disagree with you. If you don't know what the waiver wire rules are, this is something that Field Yates put out earlier today, and it was the vast majority of these moves will be made by releasing or waiving players. A player with 4 or more years of service is a vested veteran and thus is outright released. So, for example, a player like Jalen Guyton, he's just outright released. So any player that's got 4 or more years, they're just able to go test they can sign anywhere right now. Like, they don't have to wait for the waiver period. If you've played less than 4 years, then that's when they hit the waiver period. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense there. But on Wednesday at noon Eastern time, the league will process waiver claims submitted on any player that was placed on waiver. So if you think about it, the Raiders drafted at number 13. They're number 13 in that waiver wire process. So if anybody's played fantasy football and you're the last guy on the waiver wire, think of it that is basically the exact same thing here for the Las Vegas Raiders. I know it's kind of strange. I know it's a little bit weird, but they also do this during the regular season. Like, there is a waiver wire period in the regular season as well. Let's go to my man, Can't Walk. What's up, man? A little surprised they kept 7 linebackers. I saw Vic Tafur tweet out, no surprises, Raiders about to release their 53-man. No disrespect, Vic. There's no way that anybody looks at that 53-man and says there's no surprises. Either you didn't actually get the 53-man or you don't know ball. Like, those are the two scenarios, because I'm with you, Can't Walk. 7 linebackers is a surprise to me. I'm surprised they kept Kenai Malga. But again, this was somebody I mean, if you're going to run a 3-4 defense, then maybe you keep some outside linebackers as edges. But these are all, like middle linebackers in a sense. Yeah, you might play a little bit of outside like Divine Diablo. Amari Burney's a good athlete. Amari Gaynor, they're not typical like middle linebackers. But for a defense where the first defense that this team walked out there with, well, you go all the way back to that first preseason game, it was 5 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers. So for a team that runs that type of defense, like they're not going to play a lot of 3 linebacker sets a lot this season. They're going to go with that set a lot. That's surprising, but you also have to look at it as they want certain dudes for that new kickoff return rule. They want certain linebackers out there to be able to go out and handle the special teams rules, and that was something that Tom McMahon said, Antonio Pierce said, Tom Telesco said, something that we've brought up. I said that they'd keep 6 linebackers, and again, people were like, bro, that's way too many. Now they kept 7, which I agree. That was a little bit more than I projected. What's up, Wild One? Which new player do you believe gives you actually the best shot of actually having them appearing on the show? I love those, actually. Here's the real thing. There's some times where we try to invite Raiders players on here. The hard reality is their schedule and our schedule is very, very conflicting. I'll try to bring on a player, but then again, here's just the real talk of it. You have to go through the Raiders organization, and the Raiders organization doesn't want players a lot of the times on our Raiders Report YouTube channel. They want them to go to their YouTube channel. And I've asked the Raiders before. Heck, JT the Brick asked for help a few months ago when Chuggs and I were at the Super Bowl. I asked him, hey, man, let's help out. Let's work together. Dude's ghosted me ever since. So I'm just telling you, Raiders players are told to go on their YouTube channel before they're told to come over here because they look at us like competition, which I do think is kind of sad. But then again, if I saw how many views and everything that we get compared to they get, I would probably look at us as competition as well. Let's go to Garza. But if I could pick any player, I'd love to get the captains on. I'd love to be able to get some of these younger players on. I'll reach out to Amari. I'll reach out to Tyreek McAllister because I would love to get Wilkins. Wilkins would be a fun one. But, I mean, right now, based off this 53-man, I would like to get Tyreek McAllister and Amari Gaynor because I want that emotion. I would want those players who are really fired up that just made that team to get them over here. That's just proof. Garza, what veteran free agent we bringing into the silver and black? So I did make a video around this, and the plan is to kind of put this out later in the week. The top players that I'm looking at without totally giving away my show, I would look at Xavier Howard. I know he did some weird stuff. Adoree Jackson is still a player that I would look at. Patrick Peterson is going to be a name that I'll throw out there as well. There's some wide receivers. There's some also waiver claims. So the show that I'm about to do here on today's live show, I'm going to be looking at some of those names, and we'll talk about some of the waiver claims that they could potentially bring in. Rebel says Rocky Sin. I actually don't know if Rocky Ya-Sin made the team or not. I'm guessing since you said it, could be something to look at, but I'm going to make an updated free agent target, Garza. I was going to put out a video, like I said, yesterday on it, but then I put out that video earlier today, which is like the Raiders got terrible news, which was like you're only going to be able to keep 2 the Raiders might have to keep 3 quarterbacks on that 53-man if they want to elevate it. Like, I think that's the other thing that the Raiders are going to do. They could potentially, like, by that time the Raiders play the Chargers, you could see the Raiders add another QB and have them on that 53-man. Let's go to Yoda. What's up, man? With Agoa being sort of a bonus international pathway player for us, do you reckon he'll see any game day snaps? No. He was released today, and he'll get put back on the practice squad. So the NFL practice squad rules, you're allowed to have 16 players, and once the once the Raiders add David Agoa to it, then they're going to be at 17. He's literally a player that they're going to help develop. He is a good athlete. Like, honestly, like I've had multiple Raiders players tell me, like, he is a good athlete, but he also just started learning how to play in the NFL. He didn't grow up playing it like a lot of these other players, but actual game time, no. We got to be, and here's the honest conversation. David Agoa wouldn't even be on the Raiders' 91-man roster if it wasn't for the International Pathway Program player. It's just the NFL's trying to get new football overseas, which I think is the right thing to do. They're trying to expand the sport. They're trying to continue to grow it. And maybe Agoa grows into being a good player down the road. I don't have the answer to that, right? We've seen international pathway program players work out before in the league. It's worked out. It's just when you look at the honest talent standpoint of where he's at now compared to all the other NFL players, it's like no disrespect, but it's not there. But keep letting him develop. Keep letting him go out there and do this thing, and we'll go from there. Jeff Garcia, Titans cut Caleb Farley. Yeah, Caleb Farley was a player we talked about a bunch back in 2021. It's actually a shame that the amount of injuries that guy got, because when he was with Virginia Tech, he was legit a first-round corner. Like, that's how good he was. Just injuries have continued to pile up for him. What's up, Raider Reese? Mitch, I saw you at camp. I was nervous to say hi. Why? I'll say this, man. Anytime anybody ever sees me out in public, I'm a normal dude just like all y'all. And I say this, I'm a normal guy. I like to eat. I like Raiders football. I like to have a drink here and there, especially on game day. I like talking on Raiders with the nation. I think anybody that has ever met me in person, they're like, wow, he's way more laid back in person. I am very laid back in person. When I'm up here, this is my job, right? Like, if I'm going to expect a Raiders player to be able to turn it on and strap it on, giggity, on game day, then I'm going to do the exact same thing when I'm up here. Believe it or not, I'm much different here than I am outside of it.
As soon as we start filming, Mitch
straps it on. Instantly straps it on. What's up, Scoob? Which will be our best away game this year? I mean, there's one answer, and there's one answer only. Do you know it?
Well, considering week 1 is a home game, I would say Arrowhead.
It's a good answer.
I know it.
There's also another answer, and I think it depends.
Will he be the starter?
If Derek Carr is the quarterback for the Saints, there's your answer. And I don't care what anybody says. Is the Chiefs game more important? Absolutely. Is the Denver game more important? Absolutely. Is the Chargers game more important? Absolutely. It is all 100% more important. But if Derek Carr is the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, I think the answer is the Saints. And if the Raiders beat New Orleans, and if Derek Carr is the starting quarterback in that game, DC is the first quarterback in NFL history to lose to all 32 NFL teams. Never been done before. Derek can be the first to do it. And quite frankly, I think Derek is a really awesome guy, but I hope he's the first quarterback to do it, because the Raiders, I feel bad for one dude that makes videos around this team. He's going to be split in half, man. But I think the best away game this year is New Orleans. It's Derek Carr. I think it is. Now, again, there's a lot of other games that are way more important. Week 1 might be the best away game. I mean, you could say that. It's the most important. You got to start off week 1 with a win. Let's go to Raider Rob. What's up, brother? Again, y'all, we are live here on the Raiders Report, breaking down the news of the Silver and Black releasing their 53-man roster. I want to get some questions in, so use hashtag Raiders. If you want to skip the line like Disney's Fast Pass, that's where you can super chat. We'll get you up here. Raider Rob, should we add Howard or Adoree, Mitch? Yes. I'm on board with it. Like, I've been saying for weeks, months, that the Raiders need to add another corner. And I think one of the things that you got to give AP and Telesco credit for was they gave their young guys a chance to show what they have. Like, they gave to Camryn Richardson, MJ Devonshire, Ja'Cory Bennett, a lot of these younger players that opportunity to say, all right, if you don't want us to go out and sign somebody, we're giving you 3 preseason games. We're giving you all the training camp. And when you look at still some of the players that are out there, like Stephon Gilmore's deal, I would have given Stephon Gilmore that deal in a heartbeat. And I'm not surprised that Minnesota gave him a deal. We said that the number 1 destination for Gilmore was, in fact, the Vikings. But now you got to be able to look yourself honestly in the mirror and go, if Ja'Cory Bennett gets injured, what do we do? If Nate Hobbs or Jack Jones get injured, what do we do? Because I know that they like Isaiah Pola-Mao as a slot/safety. They're going to use him as a hybrid player like that this season. But, like, is the defense better with Adoree Jackson? Yes. Is the defense better with Xavier Howard? Yes. Is the defense better? I think even potentially with a guy like Patrick Peterson, who I don't think is a name that y'all should sleep on. They would probably use him more as a safety type of player. Like, that could be another name to go out there and throw out there. But, like, with $34.7 million, top 5 in salary cap space, either the Raiders got to go out and add a corner, or you better start locking up some of these players so you don't have all these dudes hitting the free agent market next offseason and you can't bring them back, because Trevon Merrick, Marcus Epps, Malcolm Kuntz, Robert Spillane, Divine Diablo Nate Hobbs are all getting ready to be free agents. You got to start locking some of those guys in. Let's go to Ruthless. What's up, my man? Have you already talked about the possibility / want to get Keenan Isaac? So I'm going to talk about Keenan Isaac here in a little bit, and this is going to be one of those players that, again, was released, and one of the shows that I'm about to do here on the Raiders Report is just go through and give you guys my projected practice squad, and then I also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 players that if I'm the Raiders, I would be interested to bringing in off the waiver wire. And Keenan Isaac will be one of those players, so spoiler alert there. But, yeah, he showed out really well, I thought, in the preseason. He was also a player that, like, shout out to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, first off. They put out their 53-man roster yesterday. So, like, as a content creator, what more could you possibly ask for? They already put their roster out there. But Keenan Isaac, big, physical type of player, I think is somebody that the Raiders should pick up the phone and they should give him a call, man. They absolutely should. If you haven't already hit that like button, what are you waiting for? I want to know down below in the comments section who's already liked this vid. If you have, type me. We're going to give some shout-outs here. If you haven't, you're probably just a closet Chiefs fan and you're trying to stalk us here a little bit. Or maybe it's the Chargers trying to get an inside scoop. What's up, Raider Rudy? Rudy, I know that you already got me, man. Day, what's up, bro? Patrick Roberts, Big Luck, Miles, Raider Muerte, always sending in the good vibes. Ed Robbins, this month's Bang MVP still belongs to Ed Robbins right now. I see Can't Get Right, real one. Zalesbo, real one. Michael Garcia, Gilbert Moreno, real one. Rebel Montana, real one. Berryface, all real ones. If you haven't already hit that like button, please make sure you do so. Believe it or not, it does help out Jeremy Chuggs and I quite a bit. Let's go to Noah Santana, who also is right there in our Raiders Report bang race. Ed Robbins has got 14. Noah's at 13. Abjin's at 13. Ira Jackson sitting there with 10. Who would be your 4 surprise impact players, 2 on offense, 2 on defense for game 1? So if I'm thinking surprise players in Nation, please, I want you all to also interact with me down below in the comment section on this one. But who would be your 4 surprise impact players, 2 on offense? The first name I'm going to go with is I'm going to go with Trey Tucker just because of his ability to really stretch the field. And I think that he's going to be a nightmare mismatch. And for a team like the Chargers that are probably really just going to lean heavily on trying to slow down Devante, trying to slow down that, I'm going to go Trey Tucker. I'm also going to go on the offensive side of the football. Can I say Gardner Minshew? Would that be a surprise player? Like, I do think that his ability to escape is going to be much different compared to what we've had in the past. On defense, on defense, I'm going to go with Robert Spillane. I know that they have Justin Herbert, but Harbaugh is going to be a running dude. They're going to try to run the football. And then the next name I'll go with there is I'm going to go with Janarius Robinson. Janarius Robinson in that final preseason game, he's got some good burst. He's got some good bend. And if it's up to Las Vegas right now, if you were to tell me overall defensive end snaps, I would say it goes Max Crosby, Malcolm Kuntz. I think Janarius Robinson gets more snaps than Tyree Wilson. Like, based off of confidence levels and confidence level alone, I have more confidence in Janarius Robinson than I do Tyree Wilson. I do. I know some people are saying Crosby and Diablo. I just don't think that Crosby fits in that surprise impact players. If Crosby still is a surprise impact player, then I don't know what I'm doing here. Early riser, move Tyree inside. I'm with you. I could not agree with you more. And this has been a channel that I think, we've done a really good job of being able to hype up. Doing a really good job, being able to hype up some of these guys. But I agree with you, man. I think it's time to move Tyree on the inside. What's up, Wild One? What is your opinion of rumblings from the Charger fans that Tom Telesco doesn't like to pick up players post-draft to strengthen at positional needs. I would say then that they didn't see what Tom Telesco did right after the draft this year. I mean, he at least tried. Like, he went out, he got Andres Pete, tried to build on that offensive line a little bit. I think also, though, like, Chargers fans seeing that Tom Telesco doesn't like to pick up players post-draft. That might be the case, but also he spent so much money with the Chargers previously, going out and trying to get some big-name guys. I think the other thing, though, that Tom Telesco said that he wants to do a good job of is doing right by his players, where that's probably been his biggest knock of he wasn't doing right by his guys with the Chargers. And I'm just sitting here thinking, with the amount of money, with the amount of needs that this team still has, I'm going to believe that some contract extensions are going to get done before the season gets going. Like, to me, that's the bigger priority that I think Telesco was trying to do, and they were just trying to evaluate their talent. But when you actually see the amount of talent that's still out there on the free agency market, and it is a lot of veterans, if Telesco wanted to go out and get a guy, he could do it. But I'm also not going to listen to the 10 Chargers fans out there. Marte, sending in the good vibes. Shout out to you, can't get right. Also, sending in the good vibes. Anthony, hey, Mitch, where can I find the full roster? Well, we just went through it here on this show. I also put out a video, if you want to go check it out on the YouTube channel, of all the players that ended up making the Raiders roster. Let me see if my IG video finally, it only took an hour to upload. Let me see. It did. We're good. The 53-man, if you want to see me rip through the 53-man roster, I did it in less than 60 seconds. That's on IG. At Mitchell Renz 365 if you want to go check it out. All right, man, we got 940 people here watching the show. Can we get to 1,000 people watching? The way that you're going to help this party grow is by clicking that like button, by clicking share. I would like to be able to get this thing to 1,000 people watching, and then we're going to break down who I think ends up making the Raiders practice squad. Some players that I would want the silver and black to potentially target on the waiver wire tomorrow. We're going to go through, we're going to look at all of those players here on today's show. What's up, Lash? Can we realistically talk about Dak to LV and our chances with him plus Devante and Bowers in year 2? If you were to ask me, is there a better chance, like, if the quarterback for the Raiders isn't on the roster right now, I do think that the top name is Dak Prescott. I do. I'll also say this, though. If I'm the Dallas Cowboys and I gave CeeDee Lamb the contract that I just gave him, I'm giving him that contract because I'm also going to go out and try to get Dak. Like, I'm not going to give out a big-time payday to a receiver like that unless I have a quarterback that's on my roster that I plan on keeping for a while. Like, why give CeeDee that contract and then just try to figure out the quarterback spot? I think that's a weird one. But I do. I think that Dak is a realistic option next season. In terms of Devante and Bowers, like, if the Raiders struggle this season, Devante's gone. I said it before. If the Raiders are 3-6 or worse by the NFL trade deadline, which is November 5th, so after that Week 9 game against the Bengals, if the Raiders are 4-5, I say you keep Devante Adams unless the team offers you like 2 first-round picks or something like that. If the Raiders are 3-6, then I think that they're going to sell Devante Adams. They're going to get out of that contract. And then they're going to try to add an extra first-round pick that they can hopefully use for next year's draft. The hope is that you keep both of those players. But Brock Bowers is the real deal. I think Brock Bowers is already a top 10 tight end. I do. I think that he's already a top 10 tight end. Yeah, I know a lot of people don't like Dak, and I don't blame them, but Dak Prescott would be the best Raiders quarterback that we've had since 2015, 2016 Derek Carr. And then you got to go all the way back to 2002 Rich Gannon. I have said on this show that adding Dak at $65 million scares the hell out of me because I do think Dak with the Raiders are one of the best regular season teams, but you don't pay a quarterback $65 million to get it done in the regular season. You pay a QB $65 million to be able to get it done in the playoffs. The only thing that, again, people just got to take a step back on is the amount of conversation that has been around a quarterback-only salary cap. QB-only salary cap, if that happens, quite frankly, I think people are going to make a way bigger deal out of the money QBs make than what's necessary because it's not coming out of our pocket. The reason why quarterback salary cap now is so important is because it impacts your entire ability to be able to, put a team together. If it's just one salary cap for QBs and then the other salary cap for a team, I don't care how much you pay a quarterback. I don't. Like, if it doesn't impact our ability to be able to make an entire roster, I think more and more NFL teams are going to go, all right, let's go out and get a better quarterback. Let's go out and try to make it happen, because would the Raiders be a better football team with Dak Prescott? Dak is better than Gardner. He's definitely better than Aiden O'Connell, and I'm not saying that that's all that much. Like, I think Gardner's probably somewhere around the 25th best quarterback, which is, something that I've said for months here on this show. He's probably around the 25th best QB in the NFL. I think Aiden O'Connell's probably somewhere around the 35th, 40th best QB in the NFL. And if you can add Dak, who's a no doubt top 10 QB in the league, a guy who almost won the MVP last season, I think only people who don't follow the NFL very closely dislike the idea of adding Dak. And I don't love the idea of adding Dak, but it does make us better right now. Coming up here on the Raiders Report, let's get into the Raiders practice squad projection and also some players that I want the silver and black to be able to go out and target on the waiver wire. We're going to run through some of those names, so just be on the lookout for that. We're still going to stay live here after this segment. I'm going to continue to answer some questions here from Raider Nation, so if you want to get those questions, comments on the show, continue to get #Raiders, or you can super chat in order to do so. Let me take a sip of my water, and then we're going to get this thing rocking and rolling. Everything good over there? Yeah, we're all good? All right, hang on. All right. Coming up here on the show, let's talk about the Raiders practice squad. Let's also go through and discuss who they could potentially have for their waiver wire targets. Coming up on the show. Who's going to be on the Raiders practice squad? We're going to discuss it today here on the Raiders Report. We're also going to look at some waiver wire targets that Antonio Pierce Tom Telesco need to consider. The Las Vegas Raiders, they released their initial 53-man roster, and if you haven't already seen that show, it's on the Raiders Report YouTube channel, where I discuss what I think about all 53 players that made it. Now, though, with how young the Raiders want to go, we're going to be breaking down who's going to make this practice squad, or who I at least think the Raiders try to bring back to their practice squad. If you don't know the practice squad rules, 16 players make the team. Las Vegas can keep 17 with David Ogoa as the International Pathway Program player. You're also allowed to have 6 veterans. 6 veterans are the player that has more than 4 years accrued. Is it accrued? Accrued, that's the word I'm looking for. 6 years accrued. So the Raiders, I think that they're going to go much younger than what you're going to see. I'm also going to start with the offensive side of the football and work my way down to the defensive side of the football from top to bottom. So let's first talk about the offense here. At quarterback, I think that the Raiders are going to try to bring back Carter Bradley, and that really shouldn't surprise many people. If the Raiders were going to keep another QB for that 53-man, I think it would have been Nathan Peterman due to his connections with Getsy before, but this is the right decision to go from a practice squad. You keep Carter Bradley. The 2 receivers that I could see the Raiders keeping is Tulu Griffin, UDFA, who's the UDFA that they were the highest on before Rambo Keaton kind of took the scene. Christian Wilkerson didn't make the squad, but I think that Wilkerson has a better chance of making the practice squad compared to Jalen Guyton, where Guyton, I think, could get swept up in the waiver process or could just get signed outright. He's played more than 4 NFL years, so he could get outright. Wilkerson is another player. If they wanted to bring him back right away, they could do the exact same thing. Zach Gentry was a player that I thought would end up making the team, but he's been around the NFL for a little bit as well, so that's a player that I would say at least keep an eye out on him making it. From an offensive line standpoint, these would be the 4 offensive line that I'd bring back. Ben Brown did a lot of work as a center, so that's a name to keep in mind. Jalen McKenzie, they liked him a lot from an offensive tackle standpoint. Corey Luciano was signed recently. He did get waived from an injury clause, so it's could be just something to look at. Maybe he still finds a way to get back to this practice squad. And then Dalton Wagner. Dalton Wagner is another offensive tackle that I would like for the Raiders to try to keep on this squad. So that's 8 players as it stands right now. We're about to get into the defensive side of the football as well, but who's the number 1 player? And I mean the number 1 player you want the Raiders to put on the practice squad. For me personally, when I look at that list of names that I just went through there, The number one player out of that list is Tulu Griffin. I think that he's a young player that I personally would like to try to develop. The other player that I would really want to make it is about to be talked about right here, and it's Charles Snowden. Charles Snowden is a name. Woo Governor is a name that I would throw out there. Ron Stone Jr., he got released pretty early yesterday, but another guy that they labeled as like an injury waive clause. So if he's healthy, I think they try to bring him back. Matthew Butler is going to be a player that they try to bring back. Marquand McCall, I think, is another dude that this organization tries to bring back. And then from their cornerback standpoint, it does get a little bit tricky. You're going to be like, wait, they're not going to keep any linebackers on their practice squad? I don't think that they do. I think when you keep 7 linebackers on your 53-man, you're anticipating Kanai Malga is that name, that once you make an addition, Kanai Malga then just goes down to the practice squad. But for me, I'm picking up the phone, and I'm trying to get Woo Governor as the top priority here, though based off what I've heard, Governor's probably not going to make it back to us. Cornell Armstrong, Sam Webb, 2 other players that I would consider here keeping on this practice squad. Jaden Grant is another dude that you have to keep. And then again, due to that International Pathway Program player, David Agoa, number 17. That is what I would project the Raiders practice squad to be based on who they're trying to go out and get and who they're trying to bring back. Now, again, we're not really going to know until tomorrow, Wednesday, noon Eastern time, when all the waiver wire picks start to go in there. And once the official practice squad is mentioned, I'll make a video about it. I'll be breaking it down here on the show. So again, if you're not already subscribed, make sure you're subscribed to the Raiders Report. So coming up here, let's talk about the waiver wire targets, because if you're a player in the NFL and you have spent less than 4 years and you get released, you hit the waiver wire. So think of it as like the fantasy football draft. Raiders have the 13th pick on that waiver wire, and there's a lot of good talent out there, and I'm really trying to focus based on needs. So I'll go through, I'll tell you which players that I would look at, put a claim in for if I was AP and Tom Telesco. Before I get into that, though, I love going to football games, and also, I've been telling Chuggs for a while, I got to get me in the Sphere. And when Jeremy showed me this like new seats, like view that you can get in the Sphere, the events that they're doing right now in Las Vegas, UFC event. We got to get there, dude. And if you're like, I want to go, guess what? Shout out to Game Time. Get those last-minute tickets. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code ChatSports for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code ChatSports. That's CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's Game Time. I love the Super Deal. The Super Deal is the brand new feature that Game Time has, which I'm going through right now, and I'm on my phone, and I'm looking at some of the deals that the Raiders have for this first game up against the Chargers and SoFi. I'm also looking at tickets right now for USC and LSU. That would be a fun game to go to in Allegiant Stadium. But one of the things that I love about the Super Deal, which you can kind of see up here on screen, it's like it shows the best deal that Game Time has to offer for that game. Now, it also goes through and it looks like at amazing deals, great deals. If you're somebody like when you do online shopping, when I do online shopping, or even, honestly, if I go to a shop in general, I don't care how nice it is, I go to the clearance rack. I do. I'm not afraid to admit that. Like, I'm going to go to the clearance rack. I'm going to look at the sales before I decide, all right, that's not what I want, and then I'll look at the things that I got to pay full price for. If you think with that mindset, then I think that you're really going to like Game Time. You're going to get the best seats. The price drops. They get closer to the event. As the event gets closer, the prices continue to go down. You're going to get that lowest price guaranteed. And when I'm out in Vegas, I'm already spending a lot of money to get out there. But when I go out there, I want to take advantage of my time when I'm out there. And the Game Time app helps me be able to plan things that I want to do. It also helps me be sporadic and go to a concert. It helps me be able to go to a comedy event, a football game, whatever it is. So download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code ChatSports for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That link's going to be available to y'all down in the comments and down in the description of today's show. So let's now start talking about some of these waiver wire targets. And quite frankly, there's probably a few names. And here's me being honest with y'all. There's probably a few names that I missed. Chuggs and I, over the past 24 hours, we're trying to curate some of the best names that I would look at. And I might miss a few, but there are 13 names on this list that if I was the Raiders, I would go out and look. If you're a little bit confused of what the waiver wire is, it is, and this is, I think, a good explanation here from Field Yates with these 2 tweets here. The vast majority of these moves will be made by releasing or waiving players. A player with 4 or more years of service as vested veteran and thus is outright released. So any player that is an outright veteran, like a Jalen Guyton, he can sign with any team right away. which is what he's saying right here. A non-vested veteran is subject to the NFL's waiver system, which is on Wednesday at noon Eastern time. The league will process waiver claims submitted on any player that was placed on waivers. The priority of the waiver claim order matches the original 2024 NFL draft order. The Raiders drafted pick 13 during the draft. That means they have the 13th pick in the waiver process. So if the Raiders put in for Woo Governor or any of the players that I'm about to mention here and somebody above them in that waiver process, the Broncos are at 12. If anybody does that, then they would get it. I know it says Carolina's 1. They are number 1. It doesn't go back to because the Bears made the trade at number 1. Carolina is number 1 on that list. So let's look at some waiver wire targets. If the Raiders want to look at a quarterback, maybe you want to look at Bailey Zappi. And this was a name that I had so many people mention to me of, Mitch, could the Raiders go out and get Bailey Zappi? If I'm Las Vegas, and here's me being honest with you, do I think Bailey Zappi is better than Carter Bradley? I do. I do honestly think that. But I would actually have just Carter Bradley, who's been in this system and who's probably able to execute our offense a little bit better. That's the guy that I would look at. I was hoping that Dorian Thompson-Robinson would hit the waiver period, but the Browns ended up keeping him. If you want to go with another quarterback that, does have some athletic ability, and I would be curious if Trey Tucker, a player who's got a good connection with his old quarterback in college, Desmond Ridder, maybe he could talk to him a little bit. Ridder was released, so could you find somebody that's got a little bit more mobility, a little bit more talent in that regard? I'm just saying, Desmond Ridder is somebody to keep in mind, and I've been saying the DTR Dorian Thompson-Robinson name for quite some time. He has made the 53-man roster, which is what Mary Kate Cabot said here, but I don't think that Cleveland is happy with its quarterbacks because they kept 4, and they were trying to shop Jameis Winston and Tyler Huntley. So the fact that they're fielding calls for Winston and Huntley, I think that tells me that they want to keep Dorian Thompson-Robinson on this roster. So probably not going to have an opportunity to go out and get him. Definitely a name to keep in mind here. He was released by the New York Giants. 2 picks last season, 3 PBUs. Darnay Holmes, I'm telling y'all right now, this is absolutely a player that the nation should keep an eye on for the Raiders putting a submission claim. Another player to keep an eye on is DJ James. He was a 6th-round pick for Auburn this past year. He went to Seattle. They ended up moving on from him. So for the Raiders, I'm looking at certain positions of need. Quarterback is a position of need if you're looking for a QB3. It is. I think it's also at corner. That's definitely a position of need. So DJ James, Darnay Holmes is the name to keep in mind. This name is a familiar name. Tyler Hall, he was released by the Philadelphia Eagles. I thought that Philly might try to move on from James Bradberry. They decided to keep Bradberry. Hall, though, is another good slot corner where if, God forbid, if Nate Hobbs were to go down, you bring back Tyler Hall, who did spend some time with the Raiders. I want to say he played in 11 games last season for the Silver and Black. So Tyler Hall's a name to keep in mind. To me, though, the number one player that if I'm the Raiders, I'm putting a claim in for is Keenan Isaac. He's 6'3", 190 pounds, and he's a big boy. Tampa Bay decided to move on from him, which I'm not going to lie, I was kind of surprised about just because of how well he did play in the preseason, how physical of a player he is, and the physicality that he brings to the football field is something that AP is something that Telesco wants to be able to bring in. And the way that I would look at it is like, okay, the Raiders, they decided to keep 6 corners on their 53-man. These are the 6 players, but also remember, what was I saying all offseason? They want big, long, athletic, lanky corners. And that's a lot of what the Raiders have already brought in. So Keenan Isaac is really a name to keep in mind. Also, he's got some ties there with Carter Bradley as well. Let's now go to the big boys up the middle. Jacqueline Roy, he was a defensive tackle for the Minnesota Vikings, and they were shopping him around, and I didn't know whether or not he was going to end up making this squad. So the fact that they were shopping him, that's a defensive tackle that I would keep an eye on there from LSU. An edge rusher that the Raiders really should go out and put a claim for is KJ Henry. Like, KJ Henry was another player, and this is the way that it happens every year. Old regime, I want to say he was a 5th-round pick last year. Old regime, now he finds a new home. KJ Henry on the waiver wire. He's going to be a name to keep in mind. Defensive tackle Siaki Ika, hopefully I pronounced that right. 3rd-round pick last season out of Baylor. And if you want a better run defender compared to what the Raiders already have, I think that's what Siaki Ika does here. Better run defender. And the Browns have a much deeper defensive line, especially at defensive tackle, he's going to get picked up somewhere. Definitely a player to keep an eye out for. Gable Stevenson's going to be another one here, and this might be an unpopular opinion. Former WWE star, but was a player that I think does show some spark and could be a dude that maybe the Raiders want to take a little bit of a flyer on here. Was a wrestler, again, even in college. I want to say he was a gold medalist or something like that. Yeah, Doug's going, yeah, he's a gold medalist. So, showed some of that. But, again, the Bills have some good depth there. From an offensive line standpoint, a name that I'll throw out is Brian Hudson. I think one of the best offensive lines in the NFL is the Detroit Lions. And this is, again, more of just a interior offensive lineman that could just help out the Raiders. I don't know if he's better than Jordan Meredith per se, but he's right up in that, where I would have him battle it out with Jordan Meredith. This next name I'm going to give you is going to be a controversial one, and it's Josh Ball, okay? Josh Ball is controversial because he's got some domestic violence stuff, okay? And we know where Fred Belindikoff role is. We know where all that stands. But this is going to be a name, and it's already been a name that I've seen being thrown out there from a offensive line standpoint. Could the Raiders potentially bring him in? Talent-wise, you could put a claim in for him. All that other stuff, though, definitely needs to be looked into. It's just a fact. And then I'm going to go with Javen White. Javen White spent some time with Chicago last season, was also on the Raiders UDFA. He was from UNLV, was a player that a lot of us, I think, fans did truly love. My point is, if the Raiders are willing to keep 7 linebackers, and if linebacker is a position that is very important, especially on that special teams regard, Javen White, hard-working player, just somebody that I would keep an eye out for. And if we're not going to put anybody on our practice squad, I think Javen would be a good fit with that practice squad. If you want to be able to hit me up on IG and on Twitter, hey, man, you always know where to find me. I'm at Mitchell Renz 365, trying to pump out as much content as I possibly can on all those sites. And if you have any questions about what you saw in today's video or in my 53-man video, easiest spot to get a hold of me is on social media. The next time that Chuggs and I are going to be live on this show, I want to say is going to be on Friday for Raiders Friday Happy Hour, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific, unless breaking news does end up happening. Lord Buddy Bear. What's up, Buddy Bear? Trust the process, but there's always 1 or 2 head scratchers every year. Just once, could there be no surprises? Oh, and F. Tom, Fumble Brady, as always. I think sometimes when you look at the head scratchers, it's more based on, the Raiders are getting ready to make other moves. When you have Keenan Isaac on the initial 53, I think that makes it easier for the Raiders to go, okay, the next player that we sign, Keenan Isaac gets put on the practice squad. So, I think that could be a way where they value Keenan Isaac maybe a little bit more than some other NFL teams, and they just want to make sure that they're going to have him on their practice squad. But I hear you. There's always some head scratchers year in and year out. I do think that you have to trust the process. I don't know how. I just got locked out of my computer, so give me a second here. And I'm back in. Let's go to Noah Santana. Will Mayer potentially have a greater season overall compared to Bowers if the opponent's defense worry/focus more on stopping Bowers? I still think that Bowers is going to be the player that puts up better numbers, but Mayer is going to have a sneaky season. I could see Michael Mayer winning some people a lot of money on daily fantasy where he's just going to go off randomly, I think, one game for 2 touchdowns. He's going to be a player who I think could get 2 to 3 catches a game, finish the game with 40 yards, but find pay dirt twice. Mayer's going to make an impact, but so is Brock Bowers. Erickson, what's up, bro? Did Rashee Rice get suspended? No. I think the Rashee Rice situation is going to happen next season, and I don't know why the NFL does what it does. It just kind of kicks the can on things down the road. And, the whole innocent until proven guilty. The problem is, I think we already know what actually happened there. But I want to say the court case isn't until, it's really late this year. It's late. So, there's nothing going to be happening. I think Rashee Rice gets suspended next season, though. But then again, it's the Chiefs, and we see time and time again the NFL folds for Kansas City. Miles, Mitch, did you see the 49ers fans were saying that they invaded our stadium in that final preseason game? I mean, they did. I think every fan base has invaded Allegiant Stadium. The fight video was insane. But, again, I think other NFL fans have to realize, and Raider fans have to realize, When you go from Oakland to Allegiant Stadium, no disrespect to the Coliseum, there's not many people, away fans, that were circling their calendar going, I want to go to Oakland, I want to go to that stadium. Now, fans are going, I want to go to Las Vegas. Oh, and I can also go watch my favorite team play against the Raiders. Like, that's an entire experience. And I always say this, like, if I'm looking at that opposing game of how can I take my family, my wife, my significant other, I'm going to show my significant wife the schedule, and then she's going to probably pick that Raiders game. Like, with the ticket prices, I'm not surprised at all. But Mark is also racking up the money. The Raiders are now, I want to say, the 6th or 7th most valuable team in the NFL. I know it's annoying now, but I do think it's going to get better down the road. Mark's just trying to make some money back from COVID. Let's go to Patrick. From a financial outlook, hopefully Minshew and Getsy can get us a lot of points. It's great to have a cheap quarterback. The magic number for the Raiders is 24. That's what Antonio Pierce wants to put up. For the Raiders, though, realistically, if you can be around 21, 22 points with this defense, you're probably going to be around 9 wins this upcoming season. Gary Gonzalez, you're next up here on the Raiders Report. Reminder to use hashtag Raiders, or you can super chat to skip that line. As long as the questions are coming in, I will stay live here on the show. The Raiders did release their 53-man roster. I broke all of that down a little bit ago, but hey, we're staying live here. We're hanging out with the nation. We're discussing everything going on. I have a favor to ask. Since the season around the corner, for every post-game win, can you rock a cigar? It doesn't even have to be lit. The only reason why I probably have to say no to this, and it's a YouTube problem, there was a there's a current guy who works here. He did a post-game video with a unlit cigar. I'm not kidding you. An unlit cigar, and did a post-game video of him celebrating his favorite team winning that game. And YouTube took away all the money from it. And I don't want to get a strike. I don't want to, I know I don't do this, believe it or not, despite what people think, I don't do these shows only to make money. I do actually really like making content. I've just been able to turn this into my job, just from continuously 6 years of putting out videos every single day. And, I'm just not going to show up to work knowing that, one, I have a chance to lose my channel / everything that I do that day, goes to YouTube. Like this $5 super chat, YouTube would say, thanks, Gary Gonzalez, I'm putting that in my pocket just because I had a cigar on screen. I don't know why YouTube does it, but they do it with cigars. It's weird, but it's the truth. I know, it's weird. What about a churro? I love the idea, Yoda Jenkins. Early riser. Yeah, if I had a blunt up here, they would literally shut down my YouTube channel. There was some other people who are like, oh, you guys should do XYZ instead of just getting trashed. We get trashed on here because we're allowed to do it. And it's not that I 100% agree with it, but if I'm allowed to have fun, I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to have fun the way that YouTube allows me to have fun. Mac Attack. Happy we only kept 2 quarterbacks. I think it was the right decision to make. Genuinely, I do. And I was nervous that the Raiders were going to keep an extra QB and take a job away from somebody, but I think by them keeping 2 QBs just illustrates either A, their confidence that nobody's going to put a claim in for Carter Bradley, or B, they genuinely didn't care who that practice QB was going to be between Nathan Peterman and Carter Bradley. Let's go to Raider Ed. Could have gone my entire life not know Stick passed on a trade for C.J. Stroud. Yeah, I mean, again, I think every single year old stuff gets brought up, and for a lot of people that watch the show, we talked about how Dave Ziegler wanted to move up for C.J. Stroud. Josh McDaniels didn't want to do that. He wanted to sign Jimmy Garoppolo, which is why I put out a video last year. Like, the worst case scenario the Raiders could do is sign Jimmy G, and there was at times where I just felt like the Raiders were watching my videos and doing the exact opposite of what I was telling, because I was like, you can't hire Josh McDaniels. They hire McDaniels. You can't sign Jimmy Garoppolo. They go out and sign Jimmy Garoppolo. So, yeah, it's frustrating. But this team with C.J. Stroud, I think they're a top 4 team in the NFL. If the Raiders had C.J. Stroud right now, I think they're a top 4 team in the NFL. I think they are good enough to be in that conversation with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, with the Baltimore Ravens, with the Bengals, the 49ers. Like, they deserve to be in that conversation if they had Stroud at QB. But obviously, We don't, and we continue to truck forward and look for our franchise guy. Jersey boy, Mitch, what would you rather do, sign Dak or draft Sanders? I'd rather sign Dak. And the only reason why that I say that is because I don't think Shador Sanders is the answer. I think Shador Sanders is a me guy, and everything he does is me, me, me. And you can say what you want about Dak, but I actually don't think Dak is that much of a me guy compared to a lot of other quarterbacks that are in his position. I don't love either option, if I'm being real. If I'm going to draft a QB, the QB that I want is Cam Ward. That's what I'd want. Rubio still partying here. My 49ers fan coworker, who always hates, said, I don't see the Raiders not getting last place in the division. I defended as much as I could. He wants to know what you guys have to say. The Raiders, I want to say, have been projected to finish last in the AFC West every year for the past, 6 years, and they haven't finished last, so I mean, the last time the Raiders finished last in the AFC West, probably, 2019? I'm fine with it. Give me all the bulletin board material you can. I just don't think the Chargers roster isn't better than the Raiders roster. The Broncos, I think, have one of the worst rosters in the NFL. And then I know Bo Nix played well in the preseason. So did Zach Wilson. I still think that the Broncos are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. The Bo Nix hype, now maybe your buddy's an Oregon fan and maybe he thinks Bo's going to be good. I still don't think that Bo is going to be a good quarterback. So I'm just going to go ahead and say the Raiders, to me, are picked last every year, but yet they figure out a way never to finish last in that division. I think it's just because they don't have the quarterback that people believe in, and the NFL media just pays only attention to quarterback play. So they pay attention to Herbert. They pay attention to Jim Harbaugh. It's all good. The Raiders have a better roster than those two teams. It's just people don't believe in Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. And that's just the live truth. Evil Chuck looks absolutely jacked. My goodness, man. Raiders should sign Evil Chuck. He's a good boy. I'll tell you this right now. Evil Chuck, you put a football in his mouth, nobody's touching him. Evil Chuck runs legit a 3.240. I mean, he's dynamic, man. I can remember the first time I realized that Chuck's got me beat, which was a few years ago. I pulled my hammy playing in a softball league with a bunch of Raiders fans down in Austin. We won, by the way. And that's when I first realized, all right, he's got me. And then after I healed from that hamstring injury, I mean, dude's, there's not I actually think if you were to put 3 Raiders players out on a field, and if I told Chuck, hey, no one can get a hand on you in 60 seconds, and you get treats all day, there's not a 3 combination of Raiders players that's getting a hand on Chuck.
Can confirm.
He's unbelievable.
Chuck is the most agile thing I've ever seen since Air Bud.
Chuck can move, dude. He can really move. Rubio, he said, that's fair, thanks. Hey, man, I'm happy I can help out here a little bit. Also, Chuggs had to go make another video, so I got Trizzy Trace here on the mic, so if you guys hear anybody in the background, it's Trace, so if you guys want to say hello to Trizzy, you can always hang out with him. What's up, Rebel? Rebel says Trizzy before I even got him up here. Jersey boy. Mitch, oh, that's one I already answered. Dak or draft Sanders. So here's what we'll do. We'll stay live here for another few minutes. We'll answer some questions. If you want us to stay live, continue to get the hashtag Raiders. The super chats are rolling in. If not, the next time, like I said, you'll see us will be on Friday, or if any other breaking news happens over the next 48-ish hours or so. We got Twinkie. Would Kareem Jackson be a good addition? Thoughts? To be honest, I think we're good already in that position group, man. I would like to see what he would even want from a salary standpoint. But, if there's one position group that I think that the Raiders are already pretty solid at, it's safety. He's not better than Marcus Epps. He's not better than Trevon Merrick. He's not better than, I think they want to develop Isaiah Paul-Amal. Trace just showed me he's got a 75.1 coverage grade from a safety standpoint, which I like, but he's also 36 years old. If I'm the Raiders and I want to add somebody that's that old, I'll probably add Patrick Peterson, and I would add Patrick Peterson over a Kareem Jackson for the simple fact of, Peterson showed a lot last season when he was playing safety with Gerald Alexander, Gerald Alexander was the safety coach in Pittsburgh last season. He's now the Raiders safety coach here. So, if you're going to go old, I'd say you probably just go Patrick Peterson, but I also want the Raiders to be able to develop young safeties because we have already 2 very good safeties.
For the record, Kareem Jackson was a first-round pick in 2010. I was in the 5th grade.
In 2010, you were in fifth
2010,
grade.
I was in the 5th grade.
In 2010, I was a junior in high school.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could have been like my big buddy. You could have drove me around.
That's illegal.
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Well,
lie.
Texas. Some states it's fine.
If you're a junior in high school and you're hanging out with a 5th grader that's not related to you, that's weird.
Well, it could be like, have you ever seen role
I
models?
love you now.
No, it could be like role models though, where I'm like the little kid and you're my big brother, and we like run around and like go to parties and stuff together.
Sure.
Or go to like hang out to like Raiders tailgates.
That also means though that I did something shitty.
I mean, you could have driven a Raiders truck up on top of a school building or into a school building, like in role models.
I was actually a good student. I would say the things that I did in high school, my cousin Anthony and we used to do this where we found like some lightsabers, so we would direct traffic.
Oh, I love that.
After like football games and stuff.
That's smart.
Got a little bit of trouble there. I used to be the fake hall monitor. I would write up freshmen and tell them to go to the principal's office.
That's hilarious.
I got in a little bit of trouble there. Again, I went to a small school, so everybody legitimately does know everyone, or most people laughed it off. I can swear to you on this, the only detention I ever got in high school was because my thong went over my shoulders.
Your what?
Thong. So for pep rally, we would deck out in orange and purple. Those were my school colors. And I found the largest thong I could possibly find at Walmart. When I tell you, it was like, bro, it was ginormous. I have a picture of it. And the thong was, I could actually hold like the strings to the thong this high.
Yeah.
And it was a rule in high school that if you were a woman, you weren't obviously allowed to show your thong. You'd get a detention.
Sure.
So they gave me a detention because my thong was showing. I swear to you, that's the only detention I ever got.
It's fair. I got a detention one time because one of my teachers, it was my geography teacher, Miss Moreno. Not cool. Do not like her.
No.
She got mad at me, and so I naturally decided to try to do a flip in the classroom.
Naturally.
And before, because I was flipping out.
Sure.
She was flipping out, so I was like, Miss Moreno, this is what you're doing. And I was like, kind of doing a backflip. And she was like, so you want to hang out with me tomorrow morning? And I was like, no. She was like, well, that's your plan now. And I was like, oh, darn.
See?
And I had to organize her bookshelf. It was ridiculous. Yeah, as if, so we had it alphabetically, but she wanted it organized by the color of the book. Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes no sense.
Ridiculous. Miss Moreno was just trying to get me.
She was definitely trying to get you, man. All right, y'all. Oh, we just got another one coming in here from Noah Santana. Appreciate you, man. Can we get to 420 likes? I think every time we do that.
Hey,
Big luck. Mitch showing his thong. Hey, man. Sometimes pep rallies, you got to go. You got to get wild.
Things get crazy, man.
I was the kid in high school that led pep rallies. Like I didn't play football, but I led the pep rallies.
The other part is sue me for having a lot of school spirit and wanting to get into the mood of the pep.
I had a good time. The only other time I got in trouble for my pep rally outfit, again, I went to Danville High School. It's in central Pennsylvania. I found these whitey tighties.
Nice.
And I just colored a big D on the whitey tighties for Danville.
Nice.
It was either that or our team name, I guess, was the Iron Men.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like a man holding this like
a piece of iron.
Yep. You can guess
it wasn't Iron Man like the superhero. It was just a guy holding
the Iron Men.
Oh, the Iron Men.
So where railroads were invented was in Danville.
Okay, cool.
So
did not know that.
If iron is hot, it's orange, and when it's cool, it's purple. So those were our school colors. Like T-rails.
Cool. T-rails. Pretty cool.
Yep. Hey.
I like that.
Danville, Pennsylvania. Noah, Mitch, I know you don't mess with Shador, but if we were to get him, what are some positive things he would bring to the use? Also, duckies. No, we're not really doing a duck race today, Noah. So if you sent one in, I'll just send it back to you. Legitimately, and this is me being selfish, what I think the best thing that Shador Sanders does is it gets me more eyeballs and every Raiders content creator more eyeballs because Shador Sanders, that's what he does.
It's a good name. So I do have inside information
I'm listening.
on Shador Sanders. I was in Mexico this past December for my best friend's wedding, and staying at the same resort as us was Shador Sanders. So naturally, I went up to him. I said, hey, what's up, Shador? Big fan. Love what you do. He said, appreciate it, Trizzy. I'm a big fan of what you guys do over at the Raiders Report. And so I said, well, considering you're a fan of the Raiders Report, that means you would want to rep the silver and black. And he was saying, of all the color schemes in the NFL, the silver and black continuously is the best looking, in his opinion. That's what he told me
That's
in
what he told
Mexico
you?
about 9 months ago.
Yep.
Just saying.
Based off of my Mexico interactions that I've had, I don't know if I would trust any of it.
Most of that was BS. I actually did meet Shador in Mexico, though. He was having a margarita, and me and my buddy were like, oh, my God, that's Shador Sanders. Fangirl moment. It was wild. I was just like, I mean, he's the most electric player in college football right now.
He's the most known. I think if his last name
that's
wasn't Sanders, nobody would talk about him.
If he wasn't in the exact situation where he's playing for his dad, who is Coach Prime.
Yep. Nobody would talk about a QB that his team went 4-8 last season.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the truth.
I remember seeing posts early in the football season, could this year's Colorado team take down the 2020 LSU team? It's like, not even close.
The 2020 LSU team is the greatest college football team ever put together.
Exactly. Like,
Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. I mean, Christ.
Dude, that's a
Get out of here.
No.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire. No, I'm just kidding. Jersey boy, Carson Beck, Shador Sanders, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, and Cam Ward. Who succeeds and who fails in the NFL?
This is a fun one.
I love this question, but it's also, just being honest, this is an impossible question to answer because it really comes down to landing spots where, like, Drake May was the quarterback I had graded the highest entering the NFL draft. I thought Drake May was the best quarterback entering the NFL draft, and I said that a bunch on this show. And then as soon as after draft day, I go, Drake May, I wouldn't want Drake May on New England. That's the worst destination you possibly go. Jaden Daniels, obviously I liked him a lot. I didn't love the destination of him going to the Washington Commanders with, what's his name? Caleb Williams going to Chicago. I thought that destination made some sense. I'm trying to think of some other, like Bo Nix going to Denver. I didn't like Bo Nix, the prospect, but I also said that the best destination Bo Nix could go to would be Denver to work with a guy like Sean Payton who had a lot of success with Drew Brees. So, like, out of all these QBs, the one that I'm most excited about is Cam Ward. I want to see how he develops. But, again, it comes down to landing spot. Jalen Milroe, if you were to put him on a team and you run an offense the way that, the Philadelphia Eagles try to run an offense with Jalen Hurts, you're going to have some success. If you try to put Jalen Milroe in an offense that's just like spreading it out, chucking the rock, he's not going to have a lot of success. Quinn Ewers I'm out on. Shador Sanders I'm out on. I got to see more out of Jackson Dart. But Cam Ward, Carson Beck, Jalen Milroe, though, he is a QB that I'm excited about.
Yeah, Jalen Milroe will be fun to watch.
I'm watching a lot of QBs.
He's going to be exciting.
And I hate to say I told you, everyone was like, what do you think about DJU?
No.
Called that one.
No.
DJU he's not good.
DJ Pooh.
He's not good.
So give me your 60-second Spark Notes why you're out on Quinn Ewers.
Quinn Ewers, to me, the upside is Jay Cutler. He's got all the arm talent in the world. His technique is not good. He also puts himself, I think, in harm's reach. He's also just a quarterback that I think is going to be a good college quarterback. And I don't want to say it because I feel like it happens a lot from guys that come from Texas, Sam Ehlinger, Colt McCoy, where they're good college football quarterbacks. Sure. And and Quinn, he did get a lot more mature, where you look at his first year coming out of high school, then he goes through Ohio State, then he goes to Texas.
He went to college early. He was still 17 when he went to college.
Correct. I will say this, if Quinn can grow up the amount, like from his first year at Texas to last season, and then compare it to last year to this year, if he grows up the amount that he did last season, I might change my tune on Quinn a little bit.
Sure.
But like from an arm talent standpoint, Quinn might have the best arm in college football.
So to me, it's
his
similar,
deep ball though is bad.
Yeah, no. To me, it's similar to not apples to apples, but it's a similar type situation with Spencer Rattler, where there's questions around his character and his maturity.
Yep.
But the dude can sling the pill.
Sure.
And that's something that he has great arm talent. So,
but Quinn
we'll have to see if Quinn can put it together.
And I think Coop would admit to this as well. Quinn has that elite arm talent, but he's one of the worst deep ball throwers in the NFL or in college football. That he's got to be able to figure out. And I think the other frustrating part about Quinn and his technique, like if you put him with the right coach, like maybe a guy like Brian Dable that was able to figure it out with Josh Allen, like I wouldn't want Quinn with the Raiders because I don't trust Luke Getsy right now. So I think like that's part of it.
Sure.
But Quinn, he has the ability to throw the ball 60, 70 yards, but he misses some really easy ones, man. Yoda, what's up, brother? What do you call it when Shador eats corn?
That's good.
Colonel Sanders.
That's good.
Can always count on Yoda to get a good laugh in. Jersey boy, opinion on Riley Leonard from Notre Dame. This is going to be another quarterback that I pay very close attention to because I liked Riley Leonard when he was with Duke. I thought he showed he showed his ability to make good reads / be able to tuck it and run. But again, now you're going to Notre Dame. The quarterback, what's a good way to put it here? Quarterbacks haven't really developed all that well from Notre Dame into the NFL.
Ian Book.
I mean, Ian Book was one that I definitely got right. You know, Sam Hartman was definitely one that I got right. Deshaun Kaiser was one that I thought that I got right. I feel like I've done a good job being able to analyze quarterbacks and how they're going to go to the next level. But for a dude like Riley Leonard, you really got to hope, and I mean you really, really got to hope that he lands in the absolute perfect system for him. But he's going to be a QB that I watch. If anybody's making a claim on what they think a QB looks like right now, it's way too early. Because everybody would be like, oh, Jaden Daniels, he might get drafted. Yeah. Ends up winning the Heisman. You know what I mean? Like, players can really, really develop in one season. And now with all these, what's the right word? I was going to say international pathway program, transfer portal. All the teams are switching, and teams switch up and change so much from year to year. It's really hard to know, like, what players actually look like, what the chemistry is, what teams look like. Noah, now that Trizzy with us, I believe Carr, if fully healthy, is just under Cousins' thoughts.
Well, I think that Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins are very similar quarterbacks. Maybe Kirk could run the offense a little bit better. I also do think that Kirk had a lot of favors done for him, considering he had the best wide receiver in the league. In Justin Jefferson. That doesn't take away from what he's capable of doing, but
sure.
I think that Carr and Cousins are very similar in the type of quarterback that they are. And you could argue either one has a higher ceiling and a higher floor, but to me, they're pretty much the same quarterback, if you ask me.
I definitely think Kirk is better. I think what Derek and Kirk's most frustrating standpoints are, they both at times look like top 10 QBs, and then in a snap of a finger, you're like, how is this guy even a quarterback in the NFL? And, you know, you can look at a lot of Saints debates right now. It's the same debates that a lot of Raider fans had with Derek Carr, and it's a lot of debates that, you know, Vikings fans have had with Cousins. It's a lot of debates that Falcons fans are going to have with Cousins. And it is the ability to look so good one drive, and then in the snap of a finger, it is like a totally, totally different quarterback. But I would say DC, if I had to rank all 32 starting quarterbacks, I would say Carr's probably somewhere around 17, 18, 19, where I think Kirk Cousins is probably like 14 or 15. I'd like to see what he looks like after that popped Achilles, but I think both Carr and Cousins are in that same area of can be good, but will never win you anything actually important.
They have good qualities, but they're an extremely frustrating player.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say.
If you want mediocrity, you go get Derek Carr, you go get Kirk Cousins.
Aggressively average.
If you want to be 7-10, 8-9, 9-8, maybe 10-7, you go get one of those guys. Yeah. Garrett Young should have kept Wilkerson instead of DJ Turner. Also, why are we keeping Pete? Dude was trash. I disagree with Wilkerson over DJ Turner. I think, again, if you're talking about keeping another receiver for this team, wouldn't you want to also have a guy that gives you a little bit of special teams value? DJ Turner has that, and I'm actually surprised you're saying that because Turner played really well in training camp. He also looked really well in the preseason, had a good connection, I thought, with Minshew, maybe a little bit more than he had with Aiden. And then, you know, Andres Pete, you know, you could speak on him. Yeah. He was a Saint for a long time. They kept Andres Pete because they have already some young players on offensive line, and with the injury concerns with Colt Miller and JPJ, left tackle, left guard, I don't think Pete's good enough to play left tackle in the NFL anymore, and that's where they were using him in the preseason. Realistically, if Colton Miller were to go down, I think the Raiders kick Thayer Munford over to left tackle. You put DJ Glaze at right tackle, and where they're thinking Pete falls is like as a backup left guard.
So with Andres Pete,
I also got to tie my shoe.
Yeah. So with Andres Pete, hey, look, hold on, look at me and Mitch. Ha 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 ha. So look, Mitch, pop your head up. So with Andres Pete, he's a player that he can actually play on any of the two guards or the two tackle spots.
Yeah.
And he is a player who has some injury issues and not always gives you the best production, but he has a lot of reps, he has a lot of experience, and he has versatility. And so that alone, when you have an offensive line that is young and banged up, that can offer at least some sort of security. If you need to throw him out there, you can. So.
Yeah, and I think the way that you would look at Cody Whitehair, Andres Pete, is the way that the Raiders are going to look at it as Cody Whitehair can play backup center. He can play backup guard. Andres Peak can play backup left tackle, can play backup left guard. So having a veteran like that on a very young team overall, I think it just shows like what James Craig wanted, what Getsy wanted, what Antonio Pierce Tom Telesco wanted. But I hear you. Aggressive, what's up, bro? Chargers fans eat Snickers upside down. If you look at a Snickers, it does look veiny.
It does.
And it's filled with nuts.
It does.
And with a name like Aggressive Master Raider, I'm not surprised at all here. Jersey Boy, hypothetical. If the Raiders traded for Jameis Winston, would he start over Minshew? No.
J-Bo.
It would be fun.
He's a fun player.
Legitimately, though, I do not think Jameis Winston is better than Gardner Minshew. I don't. And if you're trying to run an offense that's predicated on taking care of the football, we can all agree that ain't Jameis.
Yeah, I mean, Jameis is really good. He's like Jamal Williams. He's really good for some sound bites. He's really good to get people hyped up and have some positive social media stuff. But with Jameis, like, he's not a player that's going to take you to the playoffs. He's not a player, at least at this point in his career. After his injury in 2020, I mean, things just kind of went downhill for him. And it stinks because he's a fun player, but, like, he's not a starter.
Correct.
That's just that he is best in his role of being the hype man, being the guy who can keep everybody's energy up and being a reliable veteran if you absolutely need.
I know that people aren't thrilled about Minshew, but Minshew, every single year, people are like, oh, there's no way he's any good. He just always proves people wrong, and it's not pretty. Like, I'm not going to sit up here and say you're going to get good quarterback play from Gardner Minshew on a weekly basis. You're not going to get that. You're going to get that Derek Carr feel of there's sometimes you're like, oh, wow, Minshew's getting this done. And then in a snap of a finger, you're like, holy shit, what the hell was that I just watched? But, like, Minshew, I do think will do a better job of taking care of the football than somebody like Jameis. Jameis, if the Raiders would have kept, what's his name, Cliff Kingsbury as their OC, and they really wanted to stretch the ball down the field, then maybe. But, I mean, even is Jameis Winston better than Aiden O'Connell? I think people that aren't Raider fans would say yes. I think most Raider fans, when I ask that question, though, they would take Aiden over Jameis. You also got to consider the fact that Jameis doesn't know Luke Getsy's offense, doesn't know any of the plays that we've ran, and Minshew and AOC have at least, been in this system for just some time. All right, y'all, I think that's going to be all the questions that we have for today. Reminder, the next time that I'm going to be live here on the show is going to be 6 p.m. Not 6 p.m. I just looked down at my watch. The next time we're going to be live is going to be 4 p.m. on Friday for Raiders Friday Happy Hour. We won't go live on Wednesday. I'm not going to go live on Thursday either, though you will get plenty of content and videos going out both of those days. The Raiders, they released their 53-man roster. If anybody has any other questions or wants to hit me up on social media, always know you can find me on IG and on Twitter at Mitchell Renz 36Hungry. Mitch is hungry. I just said it out loud. Yeah, I'm hungry. Mitchell Renz 36Hungry. Rebel, you are very, very right. I do. I got to go eat some food. Peace out to the nation out there. Appreciate all y'all tuning in, and I'll see you guys on Friday for Raiders Friday Happy Hour.